Professor Devashish Chakraborty?
You are not audible.
Is he around? I can't see him.
No, he is there. He is not audible.
Maybe you can connect with through your mobile phone and you can.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
You have to connect through the mobile. In the meantime, Professor Mitra, should we take some questions?
Sure. It would be a
To
great.
reflect back again on some points. You have any insights?
I have a small question to pose. That while interdisciplinary approaches can be followed, is it possible to adhere to a specific methodology of a particular discipline? Like I have seen the medical journals. So many a time you would find that doctors are approaching their issues. They used to approach those issues from a very different point of view. If you look at the old issues 20 years back, but now you can see that they are using the econometric methods very rigorously. So why not we can adopt the interdisciplinary approach, but a specific methodology of a particular discourse can still be retained? Is it possible?
Devashishda, can you speak?
Yes, am I audible this time?
Now
Yes,
you're
yes.
audible.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
mobile works. So it's the
Mobile
Indian
works.
IT revolution, I guess. Okay, thank you very much, Professor Mitra, for giving me this opportunity to speak and really laud the effect of Tohri to bring out this interdisciplinary journal. After the distinguished panel, some of the theoretical points has been explained very explicitly, so I will not trade in that territory. I will try to go towards some of the practical issues. Anandajit introduced me as a faculty of Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, which is both deemed to be university and a business school. So interdisciplinary research, given the management education, comes kind of naturally to us in a number of streams. That's quite natural. And when we mention about the trade part, I think what President Trump is doing today, we cannot really explain that with a pure trade theory. We have to go to the international economics theories. So interdisciplinary research dominates in today's world. Now, I will try to look at one or two practical angles. Point one, in today's context, when we talk about the need for a forum to create interdisciplinary research, we have to think of what is the potential market. That we already talked about the promotion policy of the departments in a box manner many a times. It gets constrained. One other aspect I have noticed over the period that in a number of cases, the government is not unaware of the need to go for interdisciplinary approach, because in many of the interministerial groups, we find representation coming from across the ministries. But one practical challenge perhaps is that we see many a times the lead ministry, who is the member secretary of the particular group, perhaps their view some of the time dominate in the final report, and the way in which they perhaps would be interacting with the experts from various domains. So we can say perhaps we had been programmed during 90s or early 2000 in our academic disciplines. The way we were trained, we are still thinking along that line. One possible solution I see in the NEP, where the choice-based credit system, they tried to look for interdisciplinarity, and there is a research program, that research project that the students need to undertake towards the end. Last year, after attending a number of courses, I see a kind of solace there that perhaps if they start following interdisciplinary research in their graduation days, when they finally bloom into researchers after their masters and PhDs, the interdisciplinary approach would come very naturally to them. So kind of a course correction, I sense that may come up in days to come. Bit of quick sharing of my own experience. I was listening to Nandanda's experience about the INSEE journal and his own research. I have been doing interdisciplinary research on trade and WTO issues for a very long time with a friend of mine, Julien Chen, who is a lawyer by profession and academic discipline. One very serious practical problem we faced over the period is that the papers we are writing together, I'm focusing on the economics part. Nilanjanda is aware of some of our research, and he's focusing on the legal part. Many of the journals we have faced rejection simply because the journals perhaps couldn't place the paper in which domain they should put it. Is it a law paper or it's an economics paper? Uh, Idea is again the journal editorial boards are very much constrained by the stereotype they have been subjected to, perhaps from their academic childhood. So when we talk about journal, it's essentially the collective wisdom of the editorial board that comes to our mind. So, in lot many other streams I have seen, the space for interdisciplinary research is relatively limited. Again, not because of the paucity of ideas, but perhaps because of the way the editorial boards are looking at the problem and trying to posit that as an area of research which is going to earn citation and a relatively higher accreditation for them in the next round of Scopus, ABDC, ABS, or other review process. Bit sharing of my own experience as the co-editor of Foreign Trade Review, which is the IFT journal published from SAGE. What we see is that in my field, trade, you know, it's when we talk about the empirical research on trade, we start with an interdisciplinary approach. Today, we don't look at the gravity models in trade as something related to physics. But remember, it originated from physics only. Today, it's as good as economics. In FTR, in recent period, when I look at different submission, I see a degree of interdisciplinary research coming up. Primarily, one, I see a number of papers are coming with econophysics ideas where they are bringing in concept of mechanics in explaining the trade, investment, and trade uncertainty in particular, which is a very effective tool. I also see a wide application of neural network, which is trying to look at production heterogeneity based on the Melitz model, and from there coming out with very effective solution explaining the trade and investment flows. So in each of these cases, there is a very good confluence of interdisciplinary approach that is coming up, and it depends again on the way in which the research question is executed. Most of the time, what we see is that of good research, they are if they focus too much on the methodological complexity, they somehow miss the fine point of a good confluence of idea. Uh, a good example of that I can give again from my experience in FTR. Many of the papers are submitted in the journal, which is coming from the strategy theory side of management. And some of the time, we see papers based on core trade theories, but trying to bring in some of the management ideas in introduction, literature survey, and part of conclusion. The idea here is that it is not actually written by people who are having grasp over these ideas. Some of the time, it's the economists who are writing a pure economics paper and trying to add a management flavor, thinking that would enhance the acceptability of the paper, or the other way around, somebody from a strategy background, they try to run a basic rudimentary gravity model and thinking that that would add again a flavor of interdisciplinary research, which is not going to be the case. The idea is here only when, say, two people from coming from two different disciplines actually collaborate and write the paper, then actually we are having a very good paper, which is at the same time of good policy relevance and worth citation. So when we talk about interdisciplinary research, we have to keep this distinction in mind, that whether it is indeed coming with core knowledge of each discipline and actually augmenting the paper by incorporating the dimension of two different sound disciplines that we are talking about. So coming quickly to what can be one strategy for JLAIS when we try to look at the future of the journal, because we have to accept one very standard problem, that why should a young scholar submit in this particular journal if they don't see a future? And we also have to think of the future, that if the journal is not quickly Scopus or ABTC or ABS accredited, some of the time the unfortunately the promotion policy is going to play a role in their submission system. So one suggestion that I have in mind would be, number one, there has to be a policy centric dimension that the journal must try to promote. And for doing that, one very effective approach can be to request dignitaries from across discipline. And when I say across discipline, say a very rudimentary example I can give, when we try to talk about the ecological impact of the recent development policies in the Sundarban, so maybe two guest editors can be requested from India or outside, who will focus on environmental economics and sociology or any other discipline for that matter. So there will be a fair representation of both ideas coming in the journal pages, or why it should be sociology only. Somebody from the science part can also come. And essentially, in that case, we are just not talking about the ecological impact or sociology, then the soil quality, soil degradation as a result of, let's say, the shrimp cultivation, for instance, in the inland ponds, that can very much be one of the factor that will come in the research question. So, interdisciplinary approach, one, from the regular submission to be promoted in the journal will play a role. And on the other hand, the invited guest editorship, where the guest editors from their respective disciplines will bring right kind of papers, and preferably authored by people coming from two different disciplines, are going to play a very critical role. One other point I have in mind, that if the journal needs to intends to remain topical, then there must be a series of special issues which should come up regularly, and where the issues which are being cited, which are being debated, and there are recent policy deliberation in the government circles, must be the topics of the special issues. In this way, one practical challenge of citation as well as policy relevance we can marry, and through that the journal can remain topical. To sum up, what I feel is that the room for interdisciplinary research was always there, but it was much more prominent in the case of management journals and some of the time trade and strategy journals. JLAIS is going to play a very critical role, where liberal arts and natural sciences we are bringing together. This is kind of a gap that I don't think any other journal is going to fill up. In that respect, the current journal is going to really contribute to the knowledge stock. So all the best for the journey of the journal.
Thank you, Professor Chakravarti, for your practical suggestions for a very critical review of the existing so-called interdisciplinary research. And thank you for your best wishes.
There was a question that Professor Mitra had
Posed a little while ago.
So maybe if anyone wants to respond to that, and we will take few short questions response. I think it's already 1 hour 17 minutes, so everyone also has to go and leave. Everyone has to go for their dinner also. So maybe anyone can respond to that. Nandanda, you want to say?
Is there any question from the either on your streaming devices, streaming platforms, the LinkedIn and the YouTube? Because that is much important to address rather than we internally what we ask.
I'm seeing. I'm going to that also. Let me see.
Presently, Dr. Pinky Chagal has some question, I guess. Dr. Pinky Chagal, maybe you can raise your question over chat, or maybe you can ask right away.
Hi, good evening, sir. Can I ask? Yeah. Firstly, I want to introduce myself. I'm working as a senior research fellow in MNIT Jaipur, and the through this perspective interdisciplinary approach, some of my practical observation I go through my research journey, and I do not actually get my words because I am speaking in front of the experts, and so I'm trying to give my ideas what I got my practical troubles when I go through my research journey. Actually, when as an early career researcher, I try to build up my field. I am a student of an economics. I did my PhD in economics, but I tried to relate through the disaster field. So there was a problem I face. I have a knowledge of my subject economics, but now I try to switch into the another field, the disaster field. And one of the most critical issue in front of me was there. First I have to read out those technical terms of that field, and after that I have to understand the how can I implement in my area as well. So it took the too much time to me connect my subject to the another. Being as an early career researcher, if the NEP policy like to 2020 now it has come, maybe it implement in upcoming years. But the thing is, if the governance if they are trying to implement the policy only, they are putting the policy only agar implementation, if they are trying to work more, then maybe it can get the more output from as an researcher as well. So I just want to say, if suppose if I have a serious issue and I want to research, but I have a less of data, so how can I approach that problem at the that perspective level? Ki at local level the problem is a serious, and when we are trying to capture at the sustainable policies, so how can I approach? Many problems and many hurdles to verify, to prove the yes, the problem exists in that place. So and another.
Dr. Pinky, can you keep the question a little short, please? We
Sure, sure.
also have to discuss something more.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, this was one was my question related that how a researcher can get simply convert to shift in the another disciplinary approach. And so,
Who you want to ask this question amongst the panel? Who you want to respond to? Dr. Pinky, who you think should respond? Is it directed to anyone particular or anyone can respond?
I think anyone can respond.
Okay. So anyone, please.
I mean, to be very specific, what advice would you give to young researchers who want to work at the intersection of disciplines and policy impact?
Okay, let me uh, take a try at that. Maybe in fact, Professor Mitro, I can respond to your question as well. See, as far as I am concerned, I don't see any conflict. First of all, it's not the methodology. To me, it's not the methodology that defines my research, or that should define research is when it comes to the policy world. It is the research question that should justify the research. So, to a certain extent, well, you're free to choose methodology from any discipline. One should be free to choose methodology or a combination of methodology. It might be a combination of your qualitative research and hardcore
Right.
econometrics, machine learning, whatever one chooses. And
Mhm.
we did, because, see, in fact, I have hardly ever collaborated seriously with an economist.
Mhm.
My collaborators have largely been engineers, political scientists, and yes, a few economists, if I recall. Uh, well, as far as the engineer is concerned, in most cases, he provided a perspective from pure civil engineering, water resource engineering, and natural sciences. And my perspective was from the perspective or my approach was more from the perspective of economic valuation, ecosystem services, how we should be looking at a few critical issues on environmental flows, how flow regimes should be looked at, how do we value them. So, to a certain extent, when we were working, we could appreciate each other's expertise. And through this appreciation, in fact, we were in a position essentially to transcend disciplines. So, to a certain extent, what we call interdisciplinary research led to the development of a transdisciplinary framework. And a policy question, as far as my own 20 odd years or 25 years of research experience is concerned, dealing with mostly the policymakers, the corporate sector, or whatever, at least this wicked questions, essentially have been geared towards creating these kinds of transdisciplinary frameworks. In certain cases, in fact, I recall there was a project on looking at the conservation development dynamics across three landscapes, two in Africa, two in East Africa, one in India, Corbett, Serengeti, and Masai Mara. And we were trying to look at how essentially a community actually defined poverty. What is poverty? According to the community. So that was a very social anthropological approach because we had a social anthropologist and political scientist working with me. And eventually, we asked the community who is poor according to you. So they had their very qualitative way of delineating poverty. Now, then, the very next stage we asked them, so what is the first stage out of poverty? Interestingly, when we went to the Maasai community, it was a revelation for us. They defined poverty not in terms of food, not in terms of education, not in terms of housing or whatever. They defined one of the indicators of development was the number of wives and the number of children. So, who is most poor? I mean, the poorest of the lot, poorest of the poor, he doesn't have wife, he doesn't have children. First is poverty, he has 3 to 5 wives and 10 to 20 children. The richest of the lot has 10 to 20 wives and 50 children. This paper, in fact, is published, I presume this was in Conservation and Society. This paper got published. So, and eventually when we tried to look at, I mean, of course, we need to have some kind of, you know, causal relation between this movement from first stage to the third stage. We had to use econometric methods after that. So a mega qualitative framework using Elinor Ostrom's social ecological systems approach to using econometrics, we had to combine methodologies. So it is not essentially that we have to stick to one particular methodology for any form of responses to the questions, whatever seems appropriate. But what is important is the response that we got, whether we were in a position to respond to the question that we asked at the very beginning. And since this question has been posed, what should a young researcher do? Well, 2, 3 things. You cannot be masters of all the disciplines, but at least try to master your own discipline. Try to apply even certain parts of your discipline. You may not be the master of every bit of your discipline either. So, what is important is having a systems approach, a systems thinking. You have to appreciate the very inadequacy of your own discipline and you should be in a position to appreciate that you are operating in a reductionist framework because every disciplinary development happens through reductionism. Only then, in fact, we cannot get into holism or a holistic framework by ourselves. So learn systems thinking. By learning systems thinking, what we do is say, we have a barrage, a Farakka barrage, because I use this example, so let me continue with that example, which was constructed in 1975, and that was constructed to resuscitate the Kolkata port through feeder canal, because through that feeder canal, in fact, water is going to be diverted through the Hooghly Channel to flush out the sediments, and that can enhance the navigability. This was essentially the moot objective. What happened in the process? large components of the sediment got deposited on the upstream of the Farakka barrage. So sediments were not flowing, in fact, further downstream through the mainstream Ganges and through its various tributaries and distributaries. Since the sediments have an ecosystem function or an ecosystem service, that is soil resuscitation and soil formation. On the other hand, we find that the Bay of Bengal, the sea level in the Bay of Bengal is rising at the rate of RMSL, or the relative mean sea level rise, has been at the rate of 4 millimeters to 28 millimeters, depending on the gradient. And it has been eating up on the land. So land subsidence is happening, delta is shrinking, but on the other hand, the sediment flow has not been happening to resuscitate that lost land. On the other side, what we find is that the Bihar Chief Minister has been alleging that this barrage is responsible for upstream floods in Bihar. But if we at all remove this barrage, if the barrage gets, and we also have the tension with Bangladesh on water sharing over the Ganges for this barrage. But if we remove this barrage, there is another critical concern that is going to arise. Entire non-tidal part of West Bengal, or especially the less dynamic or the static part of the delta, which is where Calcutta, the city of Kolkata, is also located, has become water secure precisely because of the water flow through the feeder canal, which has been made possible because of the Farakka barrage. This is a wicked problem. So you have to master one discipline, learn systems thinking, engage with the practitioners to understand the practical problem. Read the grey literature critically, because the problem that I described, that I just narrated to you, is not available in the peer-reviewed literature. And you can only get into systems thinking when you are reading the grey literature critically. Cultivate ethical reasoning. This is extremely important. Something that Professor Nandan Non mentioned, develop policy writing skills. How do you communicate to the policymakers? It is not only policy writing skills, the sheer communication skills. You have to communicate to the policymakers, you have to communicate to the opinion makers, you have to communicate to the civil society. Because as a researcher, you are not merely communicating with the academic community. Rather, you remember that as a researcher is also a social activist. It is not that you're going to the field and and going to shout slogans, but you are creating awareness. You are actually activating a sense of reasoning among the civil society. Except that interdisciplinary invites critique, develop intellectual courage. Ingenuity requires curiosity and courage. So these are my advices. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so
Thank you
much
so much. Yeah.
for
Yeah.
responding so objectively.
Professor Mitra, if Professor Debashish or Professor Non wants to say anything on the same, their thoughts.
Please, please. I think Non wants to leave. He has some other commitment.
Yeah,
If he
please.
wants to
Thank you.
respond,
Thank you.
please,
Please
please.
go on. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, okay. Sorry for holding you for so long, Professor Non. Yeah, Professor Debashish, yeah, if you have any comments.
I just have a quick comment. I mentioned about my experience about the research on WTO interdisciplinary research, focusing on economics on one hand and the legal part on the other. Just give you one practical example. Currently, we are working on one particular aspect with the lawyer friend of mine and an economist colleague. It's about the recent COVID time when India and other developing countries asked for the patent waiver, that they should be able to produce the vaccines in their country with a degree of waiver of the patent right, which is being held by the multinationals. Now, there is a game theory part, which is a pure economics, which is trying to show why, for a developing country, under certain circumstances, going for production in the domestic market will be a Nash equilibrium, and otherwise. Now, the lawyer colleague is writing the legal part, so there has to be a very sound exploitation of the respective comparative advantages of the two set of people. The legal architecture, which is setting the context, should not contradict the game theory or economics part, which is coming at a later juncture. So when you are getting involved in the interdisciplinary research, this is the most crucial thing. There should not be a bumpy ride when a reviewer is reading that particular piece. They must feel it is actually a unified research question. It is not like two people are writing two separate papers and they are simply stapling that. It has to be a clean transition of the two ideas in one research output. A second example I can think about, again, my experience. At one point of time, I tried to look at India's engagement with other countries, and I collaborated with a colleague who comes from international relation discipline. So if we look into, for instance, India's strategy of inviting the foreign students from abroad, many students come from South Asia, Southeast Asia, Africa, and other places, West Asia as well. Now, this is one example of India's soft power, and which is coming from the Joseph Nye concept. Now, when the colleague is again talking about that, there has to be a perfect matching with the economics data, be it econometric modeling, be it descriptive statistics. It should not again look like that somebody is just talking about the soft power as a conceptual plane and some economic data is being thrown up without any linkage between the two. So once the research questions are being framed, point where taken that it becomes an integrated research output. And as Dr. Ghosh very correctly pointed out, your target is just not academic peers. For interdisciplinary research, the final output is going to NGOs who may take up for their white paper at a later idea, policymakers who may integrate it with the future policy documents. For doing that, it's actually creating the core input, and that's the reason why perfect matching of the ideas become extremely important from the early stage of inception. That's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Chakravarti. Thank you. So do we have any more question from the floor?
We can't see. It's also 1 hour 35 minutes.
Right. So can we then invite Dr. Durairaj to
Yeah.
present the vote of thanks?
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Rupmitra. As we come to the close of this enriching discussion, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all our distinguished panelists for their insightful and intellectually stimulating contribution. Your reflections have powerfully reinforced again and again why interdisciplinary research is no longer optional but essential. The insights shared today on bridging disciplinary boundaries, integrating liberal arts into public policy, and further strengthening institutional frameworks have provided both clarity and the directions. I'd also express my um, generosity of your time and scholarship that you've given to us. And the conversation like this help shape not only academic discourse, but also the broader ecosystem of research, governance, and public engagement. I would like to also extend my appreciation to our chair, Professor Rupmitra, and Professor Goswami for initiating this panel discussion, for steering the discussion with the depth and balance, for ensuring meaningful engagement with a limited time. My heartfelt thanks to all the participants who joined us in live and also via this Zoom platform, and for your valuable questions and the enriching and valuable insights and feedback based on your questions as well that we received. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the dedicated team behind this panel discussion. I would like to name a few: Dr. Preeti Singh, Dr. Rajini, who is already here, and uh, other team members, Dr. P.R. Srinivasan, Dr. Animesh, all overall supported us.
And
Uh,
Tanya also.
and Tanya as well, sorry, son Tanya. From conceptualization and coordination to technical management and outreach, their effort made this event possible. We hope this discussion makes this beginning of sustained collaboration and continued engagement in advancing interdisciplinary scholarship. Hope to see us more panel discussion like that. We actually had a discussion yesterday with Professor Goswami that why don't we have at least a quarterly panel discussion series. We invite both multidisciplinary at the same time the scholars from various regions, so that their perspective also will help us. Their shares, their ideas, and how they work, their experience will help the early researchers, early career researchers. So I believe that this platform is very crucial in this context. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful evening to all. Thank you. Thank you so
Just on
much.
a closing note, I will also, because we are on record, I will like to personally thank also Ashoka Center for People-Centric Energy Transition, Professor Devashish, two more people and few more colleagues from a company which is working on ESG and other sustainability issues called AppCon, who also have supported in mobilizing funds for the journal. And I think without this support, Nilanjanda said about courage and activism. We are doing our activism in a certain way, and it also needs funds. So without that, so that's a special mention that we have to do. Without that, it would not have been possible. So we are extremely grateful to each one of you. Thank you. Sorry, Professor Kumaraswamy, last words by you and Professor Mitra, and then we close.
Thank you very much. I have nothing else to add. Thank you so much.
Yes, I think
much.
it's already late. We can end the session. Yes.
Thank you so much.